Hello and welcome to Makers.dev episode number 10. Chris, we made it to 10 episodes. Congratulations. Most podcasts, I don't actually know numbers on this, but I imagine most podcasts don't make it to 10 episodes, and we did it. Been going for more than the last 10 weeks. I'm very proud of us. Good job, us.
Yeah, we actually did a thing and followed through. Imagine.
Yes, not just stuck in the infinite like starting project space, but like we're doing this and sticking with it and continuing with it. I love it. One of the reasons I love it is that this last week I had separate conversations with 3 different people who listen to this podcast. That were like continuations of conversations of things that we've had here. And oh my gosh, what a fantastic illustration of the benefit of having conversations in a syndicatable, shareable way. These are conversations we probably would have been having anyway. Maybe we're having them a little bit more regularly because we have the structure of having a podcast. But I had conversations with... also known as Qubit. I don't know if I'm giving away his alias online. I might need to censor that. But we had a great chat about the timestamping tool for YouTube videos that I've done. He's been doing a bunch of that just like on his own for fun, timestamping other people's videos, and I got him onboarded on my beta thing, and he's very patient with alpha software, and so is very forgiving of like the bugs that there are early on, and is getting value from it. Like he's been using my thing to timestamp things. So that's an interaction that would not have happened if we didn't have this podcast. Also had a short interaction with Johnny Tong on Twitter, talking about the CamHead thing of that he really likes the animation that I said no one would care about it. He was like, yes, I care about it. That looks very nice. And that made me feel really good. So that was a great, like positive signal from the universe. Also, Martin Garnett said on Twitter, amazing how quick you're pumping out this video stuff, and that he's been following us on Makers.dev. That makes me feel great. So it's so cool. Of like our audience from an internet perspective is not that big, but thinking about it in terms of like, if I could mentally simulate right now that we were having this conversation on stage in front of an audience, and there were, I haven't checked the numbers recently, but like, I don't know, 30 people in the audience that were listening to us have this conversation, that'd be amazing. And it's like, we're having this it feels like a regular Skype call, so I'm not getting myself psyched out about it. But I love doing this. I love that we started it. Being able to have this podcast and a way to share the things that I'm thinking about and the things that we're working on has been great. I'm going to continue this and double down on it. And I love the interactions I'm having with people. If you're a listener of Makers.dev, I love interacting with you. Please reach out. Made my day the last few times I chatted with people who are listening to this podcast. What are your thoughts on that? How do you feel like you've seen benefits from interacting with people of doing the show, apart from just like it's tying you to the mast of having regular conversations and getting your work done?
Yeah. It's really unique. Podcasts are unique because they basically pump your voice into someone else's ears for an hour, every week or something. And it's just a different type of interaction. I felt this before, like, so when I did my first real big Twitter thread about learning React, it was like learn React in 10 tweets. That got shared like a lot. And now I think the impressions are like up to 1 million impressions or something like that.
Amazing.
Which is insane. It's like, it's as crazy what the internet can do, like how it can, spread just, virally like that. And then, yeah, so that's people, who I've reached, who I would never have reached otherwise. And the podcast is just a different version of that. And like you said, it's a lot smaller than that, but it's also more, it's like a more, it's an interaction that is more, has a lot more fidelity because it's just, it's us talking. And so, and then we can carry over those conversations to real life, like you said. So it's just really neat.
I love it. I need to I'll link your thread with 1 million impressions about React in the show notes. I had a similar thing this morning with along the lines of like this video pipeline that I'm pushing out. There was a podcast that I was on like 2 weeks ago. There was this hour and a half long interview, and I was chatting with someone on Twitter about no code and the idea that everyone should learn to code, and because doing this podcast was fresh in my mind, I extracted a clip from the bigger podcast where I was talking about this concept and ran it through my pipeline, and that's just getting more and more smoothed out every single time I use it. was able to like get the clip of the exact part and then say transcribe it and edit those and get that done. And the whole thing took like, I don't know, 10 minutes from the idea of like, oh, I think I said something about this on that podcast too. Okay, I have the video finished and I can pump it out. And I posted that on Twitter this morning and forgot about it. And like 2 hours later, I looked at my notifications and had like 20 notifications. I was like, whoa, what's this? And it has like 1,000 impressions now. And that's nuts of like 1,000 people looked at this thought that I had on this podcast that would have just been lost to the ether of this idea that I had. And now 1,000 people have watched it and hopefully, presumably benefited from it. That's so cool. And so from like, oh my God, 1,000,000 impressions. I can't like picture what 1,000,000 people looks like. That's how many people is in a stadium? Like 100,000? It's like 10 stadiums of people have seen that tweet and that content and presumably benefited from it in some way. Like, oh man, that's it's just such a cool concept. And thinking about it in that way for me is so much healthier than trying to compare it to benchmarks of other people of like, oh, well, you don't have as many followers as this person, or you didn't get as many impressions as this person. Well, does that really matter if you're measuring things on the scale of like, have you helped people and trying to pull it back to, okay, if this was happening in real life, how many people have you helped? So all of that to say, I love this podcast. This is so much fun. I look forward to continuing it in 2021. And again, thank you for being the inspiration to start this.
Yeah. I'm super excited to continue it too. Yeah.
I'd love to get into your stuff. You tweeted this morning that Slack was down and that a possible alternative for people to use is Async.dev. Very opportunistic of you. Very clever. Love it.
Yeah.
How's that going? That just happened this morning. I don't know if you like keep numbers on things or have analytics that can show how that's going. You had a ton of impressions, a ton of interactions with it.
Yeah. So I almost didn't tweet it. I was like, oh, Slack's down. Weird. And then I was like, maybe I should say something. And I did. So last I looked, over like 200 people clicked the link, which is awesome.
Amazing.
That I think a lot of people are just like, oh, what's this? It turned into 3 or 4 people signing up, which is interesting.
Fantastic.
So now I should reach out to those people. Or I already have actually reached out to some of them. Yeah, I'm going to talk about this more in my update, but I'm really trying to figure out what to do because, for example, all those people saw it. I got a lot of positive feedback about it, but that is not the same thing as them being, ready to try out a Slack alternative, and especially not being ready for like their company to try it out. It's the exact same thing that Derek Reimer ran into when he was building Level. And so I'm just really, really cognizant of that lately, how I might be getting all these positive signals, but that doesn't necessarily turn into anyone actually signing up or using it. And so, so I'd love to talk about that. Let's see what else I guess I can give the rest of my update. I purposefully did not code on Meeting Place or Async over the break. I did a lot of thinking, like we talked about last time. I did some more. And then I just tried out and played with WebRTC. It was the first time I'd really done that. Cool. I bought a new domain name, which I shouldn't have done, but I actually only did it because I thought to do what I had to do, I had to have a custom SSL certificate on a domain name. But it turns out you can use WebSockets and WebRTC on just like the regular free Heroku plan, as long as you just use the Heroku app domain. So I didn't need to buy a domain name to try that out. Heroku app works just fine.
What was the domain name that you bought?
I bought audioroom.dev.
That's a cool domain name.
Yeah. And it was $12, right? So
you're corner in the market on these .dev domain names.
I know. There's a lot of single word dev domain names still left. But I think like there's some really cool dev domains still left. Anyway, but I got WebRTC working for the first time ever, which is really neat. So now like I have a thing where you can go and you can connect to anyone in the world and talk to them, and it's completely over the internet. Stun and turn work. I can explain how WebRTC works if you want, but stun and turn are basically allow you to punch through firewalls. And so, and so it's just really cool. So this is a skill that I have now, so WebRTC is something I thought about using on Async or Meeting Place or both. And so I just wanted to try it out, and I did, and it works, and that's really neat. So
fantastic. Also amazing that the technology exists that you can just add video conferencing or audio calls to an app, and that's become sort of a commodity. What a fun time to be alive. I would actually love a high level overview of WebRTC. This is something that there's a lot of things that I sort of want to build that would be cool to add video chatting or audio functionality to. Like in my media pipeline, I'm very happy with Riverside right now, and I'm sure at some point there's going to be something about this platform that's annoying to me that like I want to be able to have a webhook of when an interview is finished, it can feed into other stuff. That like if I could reduce the difficulty of building audio and video chatting, I'd love to do. And also things I've thought about just for fun of like being able to have virtual movie nights. I'm not really happy with any platform that exists of being able to watch a movie with someone. There's like Chrome extensions that if everyone has a Netflix account, their Chrome extension will sync up the Netflix video. And like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to have a movie night and say, all right, to be my friend, you have to have a Netflix account. So if I could, I already have a thing built that can sync up the video. And right now we're chatting through a different platform, and I would love to be able to say like, oh, you just go to this URL, and audio and video chatting are baked into it. How does WebRTC work? I'm confused as to why you need another server. My impression of it is that it's peer-to-peer, and that the whole point of it is that you don't have a central server.
Yeah, so there's a couple different types of servers you might need. So the first thing is that WebRTC is peer-to-peer, but you have to first, like those peers don't know about each other. And so the first thing is it's called a signaling server, and that's just your server. And so both of these peers are connected to your server, and you want to get them connected to each other. So the first thing you have to do is basically get the information from one peer over through your server to the other peer, and then get their information back to the other one. So that's what you need your server for, right?
You say their information. This is metadata, or this is like the actual audio and video stream?
No, not the actual audio and video stream. Okay. They're like where in the world they are.
Okay.
And now that's kind of complicated because it's not just an IP address, right? If they have a public IP address, then it can be that. And that's the most basic case. Like they have a public IP address, and so it's their public IP address.
Sure. No one's going to have that, though. That would be ridiculous. Yeah.
So the second case is you go through something called a stun server, which is, these are free mostly. So like Google and Mozilla both have them. Twilio has one, which is the one I'm using. And what that is, it's basically what is my public IP. And so it goes through their network path to get their public IP, and crucially the path through that network back to them. And so that's wrapped up in something called a peer description. And so like basically how can you reach me on the internet? And so that goes through your server to the other peer. That's called an offer, and then like an offer to connect. And then they send back their peer description. So while they talk to the stun server, get their peer description, send that to you. Okay, so now you both have offers to connect. Then you try to connect. You send an answer, and then you try to connect. For like something like 80 to 90% of people, that's all you'll need is like if you have nothing weird with your network, then you'll be able to connect. And at that point, the peers are completely connected, and you technically don't need your server anymore to transfer the streams. So that's when it's like that's like the super nice case, because then bandwidth isn't going through you at all, which means as long as the two peers or multi-peers is what I built. So you can connect any number of people together in like a mesh network.
Amazing.
Yeah, right. It broke my brain a little bit trying to figure out all of the signaling stuff, but yeah, basically I have to connect every peer to every other peer, and then it works. Okay. Yeah, so that's the great case. If though you're like behind a weird firewall, or especially like in enterprise settings, or I think actually my internet service provider does this too, like it does regular stun doesn't work, then you use something called turn. And what turn does is that actually sends all the data through a server. And so you can run your own turn servers, but I didn't want to do that. So I'm using Twilio's turn server, which, and this costs money because you have to actually send the data through their server. And so what it does is it acts like a relay. And so it goes through both peers connect to the turn server, and then the data goes through the turn server. And so now it's actually not peer-to-peer anymore. It's peer-to-peer through this turn server. Okay. So that is where it can get expensive because, if you have lots of people connected pushing video, then it goes through this turn server. It costs, so if you use Twilio's, it's 40 cents per gigabyte, which is pretty high as far as bandwidth goes. You can run your own, like DigitalOcean is 1 cent per gigabyte. So if you run your own turn server, you can get it pretty cheap. Yeah, so that's an overview basically. So yeah, for the most cases, 80 to 90% of cases, after you connect, you can do peer-to-peer. That's fine. In 10 to 20%, you have to run it through your servers, which can get very expensive if you're doing like high def video.
Did I hear you correctly that Twilio for their turn server charges 40 cents per gigabyte, and
Yep.
DigitalOcean for bandwidth is a cent per gigabyte?
Yeah.
That's if my math is correct, that is 40 times more.
It is.
What is Twilio doing to justify that 40 times more cost?
So, yeah. So for one, they run the turn servers for you. So turn is not trivial to implement, and so there are open source versions of it, but it's not like trivial. Second, they have it all over the world, so it's really important that these turn servers be close to whoever is running the information through them, or else they get really horrible latency. So like you can imagine, we're in the U.S. If the turn server was in Russia or something, they'd have to go all the way across the world and back, and that's bad. So they run turn servers all over the world, and then they have like fail safes and all that stuff. And so to replicate what they have, you would have to be running, at least a dozen or 2 dozen servers with fail safe backups and hot swapping replication and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So it's basically just it's kind of like AWS, right? AWS is more expensive than running your own servers at scale, but not in the for the solo developer. Basically, it's
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, interesting. From a business perspective, is 40 cents per gigabyte negligible? Is that I'm thinking like this conversation is going to be probably about a gigabyte for like 40-ish minutes of chatting. Does that then like exponentially compound if you have 3 people who all have to go through a turn server, and now it costs, I don't know, like $3 for an hour-long call? Like, do you care? Have you run the numbers of like at the scale that you're working at if this is going to matter?
So that's why I did audio, because audio is super cheap compared to video.
Yeah.
Because it's much lower bandwidth. It's basically like I don't care, even at 40 cents.
Okay,
Video, though, gets really expensive, especially with multiple peers. So
Yeah.
if you have 4 peers, not only did their bandwidth have to be able to stream to those 3 other people, but if it's going through a turn server, like if any one of those people is going through a turn server, yeah, exactly, it's multiplied by 3,
Okay.
the cost. So, yeah. So it can get really expensive with video and multiple peers.
Okay, cool. I love doing audio only because audio is nothing. That makes sense. And then maybe if you wanted to add video in the future, that's only on paid plans, and then it wouldn't matter.
Yeah. So, yeah, exactly. So there are some ways you can do video sort of cheaply. Zoom, for example, I do not know how they get video as cheaply as they do, other than just they're at a huge scale.
Yes. And it's great. You can have a chat with like 400 people in it, and you can see video coming from everyone else. I don't know how they're doing that. Yeah.
So that is you can do that with WebRTC too, but you have to go through another server called, I think they're called gateways, and basically there are multiple ways that you combine video streams into one. So, for example, if you're watching a speaker and have a bunch of little videos, like you only need the thumbnail for like 8 people and the main thing for 1 person, and that is all going through Zoom's gateway servers basically. So
okay, so they're doing some processing for the 400 people. Yes, there is the bandwidth of like each of those 400 people has to be uploading to one place, but then that just goes to one server, and then that one server remuxes that and then spits out just a I don't know, maybe like what's it called when you do sprites, like a video sprite where they're all just in little squares, and then it splits it up at the end.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, that would make sense.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know how they're so cheap basically.
That's interesting. Well, I guess if they're making their own servers on DigitalOcean, only paying a cent per gigabyte, that would help.
Right.
40 times less. Okay, and then a stun server, those are free if you're going through Twilio or Google's or Mozilla's stun server just to like expose your IP address. I'm thinking like this is like ngrok. This is a way to make a tunnel into your network.
So sort of. Well, not really, because ngrok.
Oh, you know who didn't run their commands? All right,
I was going to ask you about that.
I totally forgot.
Cool. So ngrok, as far as I know, actually runs your data through their server. Maybe not, but no. All a stun server does is tell you where in the world you are. So you hit it once. It's like where's my IP. So it's just it's more complicated than where's my IP, because it's like where's my IP through all the different network layers.
Yes, sir.
But that's basically what it is.
Oh, that breaks my model of how networks work. I would think. How could is WebRTC making a tunnel on its own? Is WebRTC doing the job of ngrok? And then the
Yes.
stun server is just telling you where that tunnel needs to go?
Yep, exactly.
Okay, neat. And I asked this and then didn't listen to your answer. Those are free to use those servers.
Yeah, Sun servers are free. Yeah, I think you can pay for them if you want, like uptime guarantees, like especially Google and Mozilla are like these might go off at any time, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Cool. How amazing is it that like this used to be a really hard problem. This was, the problem of how do we connect people through audio and then later video. That's the problem that made AT&T. That was a problem that was so complicated and so hard that it made this multi-billion-dollar company. And now, if you're okay only serving 90% of people, you can just write up some code and spin it up. And now you have created a communication channel for audio and video. Amazing. This is what an exciting time to be alive. Okay, so how is audio chatting integrating in Async.dev? What's the plan there?
Yeah, so there's two ways I might integrate it into either Async.dev or Meeting Place. Well, so my first thought was actually to just make it its own Slackbot thing. So like in Slackbot, if you have Zoom hooked up, you can type /Zoom and get a Zoom call, which is like a video default, video by default or whatever. I think it'd be cool if you could type like /room and get an audio call or like /call, right? And then it pastes the link to an audio room. So that I might actually still build that because that just sounds kind of neat, and we'll see. In Async.dev, it'd be basically the same thing. So like we're talking on Async.dev, this really should be a call, and so maybe we need a synchronous call for this, right? And so just start it up. It doesn't fit 100% there because people probably have Zoom or something, right? Where it fits better, I think, is in Meeting Place. There is something that a lot of meetup organizers want, which is like a way to connect users with each other, like before and after the events. And in person, this is easy because everyone's at the same place and they just break off and talk in small groups, and then the speaker happens, and then you break off and talk in small groups. So what I think would be awesome is if there was the platform did that for you. And I did over the holiday break, there was an indie hackers holiday social which did this. They used a service, and it allowed you to like basically sit at a virtual table and talk to just those people at your table. And that was the whole thing. So it was like a holiday party. You could like switch tables and like talk to whoever you wanted. Cool. With something like what I just built with WebRTC, you could do the exact same thing like before a meetup event. You could have like a pre-meetup lobby and have like tables with like 4 seats, and you click on a seat and then you're talking. That's 4 people, and you're just talking with those people, and then the talk happens, and that's more like either a Zoom call or like a YouTube live stream or whatever. And then afterwards you go back to the lobby and you can chat with people. So that is how I'm thinking about integrating it into Meeting Place.
I like that a lot. And I can't remember if this was a call that we had on this podcast or before we started it, but I remember you telling me about Meeting Place, like, and how excited you were to refocus on this at the beginning of the pandemic, that like the market has substantially changed, and meetup.com is no longer positioned in a way to best take advantage of this. And I remember thinking like, what a fantastic position you're in, that you're approaching this problem tabula rasa of like, okay, this is the way that the world looks right now. What does it look like to try to solve this problem of how do you create connection in communities when there is COVID and it's more difficult to meet up in person? This is exactly the sort of thing that I think is an example of the advantage that you have of like, I think it would be very difficult for Meeting Place to move in this direction of having an audio chat platform because they're bigger and more established, and it's harder to move when you're that big. And even if there are some upstarts in the company that are like, oh, we should move in an audio chat, like that's hard, and they'd have to campaign for that, and that'd be like a 12-month process to get that rolled out. And you can just over a weekend be like, oh, let me learn WebRTC and roll this out, and I know my audience and the problems they have, and have experienced this myself, and now you can be much better positioned to take advantage of the problem that's been created of needing a virtual way to have breakout rooms. I love the way you're approaching that too. Of like that's a salient problem of the value of community is to be able to have those chats and serendipitous communications. That was something that I loved from Ali Abdal's part-time YouTuber classes. They used the breakout rooms in Zoom very effectively. They'd have a little section of a lesson and then say, okay, here are questions to ask yourself in this little journaling exercise. And now you're in breakout rooms of 3 or 4 people each. Give each other your answers and talk about it. Some of the best conversations, some of my best insights came from those chats, and made some great connections, but also just sort of walking through the process of, I'm chewing on this information. I just got this information, and it would be very easy for me to just say, "Oh, I got it and I understood it." But by having a conversation about it, that's cementing the thing that I just learned, and maybe I get someone else's take on it, and that helps me form my own opinion of either I agree or disagree with them. Yeah, I like that a lot. I think I could see huge value in a model where you made it very easy to say, like, okay, here's a model for how you can have more of the social aspect of a meetup. You have your live stream chat on YouTube or whatever. Here's how you do that. You post in your meetup group that this is what's going to happen, and here's the model of the buttons that you push on Async.dev to be able to have the audio chat. And then here's the model of how you do breakup rooms, like step by step. Okay, the call is finished. Now tell everyone to go back to the meetup place room. I'm confabulating async.dev and meetup. I'm noticing myself doing that.
Yeah. No,
whatever the platform is that you recommend people go into to be having these chats, and then they're able to have these chats and conversations about the information that they just learned. It's sort of a way to have the breakout room from Zoom in a modular way that you don't have to have your entire thing on Zoom. And then the advantage of using a platform like yours is then the conversation could extend past just when it exists right there. Something that I got frustrated by was having the breakout rooms in Zoom. If I wasn't consciously like noting the people's names and writing those down, those connections are then just lost. And there were a few times where someone said something really interesting that I wanted to follow up on. And because I had taken those notes and made those connections, I was able to go in a different channel and chat with them. But if that was more baked into the platform, and it was very easy for me after that conversation to continue it asynchronously, I think that'd be a huge benefit. So all of that to say, yes, great. I think you're sniffing out valuable problems and solving them in a way that makes a lot of sense for the world that we're living in.
Yeah, exactly what you said. Like the second part of that is like after the fact, you would get a kind of a dashboard report of, you were in this table for 20 minutes with these people. And by the way, if you want to message them, click here and you have private messages basically. All that kind of stuff is something that meetup organizers have told me that they're really fighting to find a way to do. And so, yeah, I'd like to solve that for them.
Love it. Pulling back to me confabulating async.dev and meetup, and also your thoughts about like what to do next. How are you framing that? What are you seeing as next for this? You've been doing a lot of thinking. I am starting to have trouble distinguishing these two different platforms. How are you thinking about that? How are you framing the future of these two products?
Yeah, so this is what I've thought a lot about. Basically, I have several options for what I could do next, right? I could go all in on one or the other. I could try to do them both. I could, for some reason, do neither and do something else completely different.
Yeah.
And so here are I have two big problems with both Meeting Place and Async. And so I will explain my problems and the reason why I avoid going all in on one or the other. And you kind of tell me what's going on. Okay, so Meeting Place, I have people on it. I have people paying, not many, but some, and it is something that I think I can really solve for a lot of people. The problem is, since it's not B2B, it's not exactly B2C, and it's kind of a hard sell to tell someone to either switch their group to it, or if they're starting a new group. What I'm seeing is a lot of people start a new group, they'll have one event, and then they'll decide it's too hard to be an organizer and just stop, right? Mm-hmm. And then the per group price that I can get is not that high, which means I need a lot of groups on there. Something like 500 or 1,000 groups, active paying groups, like 500 paying groups paying $20 a month to really get to even a full-time salary. And so that's kind of where I started coming up with the idea that there could be free groups that sponsors pay for, right? So big groups, big companies could sponsor, groups, and then maybe I can get some more money that way, but then I still need a lot of groups to be on it. Okay, so that's one. For Async, my problem is exactly what Derek Reimer ran into which was a lot of people think is really interesting. Every time I think I should maybe stop working on async, I see another post like, "Why isn't anyone working on an async version of Slack?" Or why isn't anyone doing something? And so a lot of people are very interested in the problem, but getting companies to switch is going to be super difficult without building just a ton of features, a bunch of integrations. Like I've talked to a few people, and they're like, "I would love, to have something different, but I have 45 integrations in Slack right now. Does that mean I have to switch all of those, to switch or whatever? And then you gotta get your whole team on there. And then what if it doesn't work out? Then you gotta go back to Slack. I have some thoughts about how to fix that, but yeah. So those are my two big problems. I like both problems, say equally. I think async is the bigger. If I was going for like bigger market share, I think that's a bigger one. But I think Meeting Place could be a business that supports me. I just need a lot of people to get there. Yeah. So what are your thoughts about any of that?
At a higher level, ever since you brought up the concept of TikToking, that's how I've been framing a lot of my own work of like, it's perfectly valid. And I think probably the highest probability choice to be pushing both of them forward. And when you get stuck, stop putting effort there and put effort into something else. Maybe a third thing if that comes up. That's the mode that I've been working on since like 2 or 3 episodes ago. And oh my gosh, my output has just been so much higher than it was before when I was like forcing myself into only pushing file inbox forward. So it's perfectly fine being in this point of like not knowing what the best thing to work on is, and just push forward when inspiration strikes and when there's low-hanging fruit of, okay, let's figure out WebRTC and integrate that. That would be a ton of fun. The spot that you're in and the way that you're working on it, I think is perfectly fine. I don't see a problem currently. Let me start with async. The problem of having to rebuild feature parity with 45 Slack integrations is impossible. That's not a thing that you can do. And I remember reading Derek Reimer's post, and I'll link that in the show notes too, of the reason why he stopped working on his thing. I forgot what it was called. Level, yes. That same problem of like, as a single developer, you cannot build feature parity. That just doesn't make sense. And the way around that, I think, is you niche down. You make the problem that you're addressing much smaller. There's a reason why there are 45 Slack integrations, and it's that this person had 45 problems, and the easiest way for them to solve those 45 problems was to pull it all into this one tool. That was just the easiest way to do it. Take one of those problems that's your favorite problem, that's a problem that excites you, that is an interesting problem. Maybe it's this thing of like being able to jump into a asynchronous audio chat, and make your tool the best way to get that done, so that the next time someone's out there looking for a tool of, I am hosting a conference and no one at my conference is currently in Slack, or maybe they are, but no one's very active, but like I'm hosting this event, and I would like a way that my participants can connect in between sessions and then be able to continue that discussion outside of the session. What's the best way for me to do that? If you're positioned there as the best way to solve that problem and the easiest integration, it's even easier than if you added another Slack integration. Okay, well now you've niched yourself down to this problem, and now you start collecting users. And then you can slowly grow into adjacent problems of, I don't know, maybe asynchronous conferences is a thing that would make sense. Of if you have that feature set and you have people who are using it and loving it, then it's easy to grow into that adjacent possible space. But you've correctly identified, like Derek Reimer said, that you can't attack Slack head on. It's too big. It's doing too much. To try to build something that was a replacement for Slack wouldn't make sense. Don't make it a replacement for Slack. Make a solution to a problem that some people are currently using Slack for, and that's not a straightforward problem. That requires deep industry knowledge of what all these extensions and integrations are being used for, and who the type of person is who's using them, and how they're framing the problem. But just chipping away at it piece by piece, I think is the way forward on that. On Meeting Place, I think I want to hear more about that. $20 a month seems like nothing. It seems like you're attracting B2C type people. that's a consumer price.
Yeah.
I'd be curious about like who are the people who you could be charging $100 a month that they find that interesting.
Yeah.
Also, some clever things you could be doing of like maybe one of these products becomes more valuable than the other, and then you just make one of them free and a lead magnet into the other one. I like also the concept of sponsorships. I don't know how are you currently selling Meeting Place? Who is Meeting Place for, and what problem is it solving?
Yeah. So I thought a lot about this too. So, okay. So Meeting Place was originally built as a meetup replacement. The way Meetup makes money is they charge organizers. There's two ways. They charge organizers a monthly fee, right, to run the groups. And then they have this Meetup Pro thing where big companies can run like 1,000 groups all across the world. And they charge them more money per group, basically. So my first thought was to replicate that model. So I charge the organizers monthly fee. So right now it's $12 a month because I didn't have like feature parity with Meetup even. I think I can increase that now, right? But not very much because the people who run meetups are like, they're kind of like me when I started my meetup. Like I was just a developer. I wanted a meetup to exist in my area for React, so I created it. I was probably willing to spend about $20 a month to make that happen. There are a ton of developer meetups like that. And other meetups too, but most developer meetups are something like that. It's just some person running it. The other kind is companies who run meetups. Well, and so I'll say something else about the other developer meetups. Almost always, they eventually get a sponsor to pay for the meetup costs and then like usually food or whatever. And that sponsor is almost always a company. By the time they get a sponsor, though, they've already had to sign up and like start the group, generally. Sponsors are willing to pay, like once they pay anything, they might as well pay, $100 a month, like whatever. It doesn't matter to them, really. But to get the initial group going, you have to get the person to like start it.
Yep.
That is why I thought if they're gonna, so I could keep going with like trying to get people to pay $20 a month, and then eventually they get that on a corporate card, right? Or that is kind of why I thought I could just offer that level for free, and then do this external sponsorship thing. Or it's kind of who I want to serve. So that is me serving that audience. The other one is the brands. So if I go after brands, then they're the ones willing to pay, $100 to $1,000 a group, for some of the giant ones. But it's more like an enterprise sale. It's very, so it's, and I wouldn't be serving the developer meetup groups that I started the thing for. Yeah. So it's who I want to serve, who has the money, and it's kind of the process, like how the thing happens, which is what makes it all challenging.
Enterprise sale sounds gross. That would be easier with a co-founder who liked that and already had those connections. Okay, this is very interesting. It sounds to me like there is much more potential in offering this as a free product and just optimizing for this makes it easy to do the things that you could do with Meetup. And then make money from the sponsorships of like a problem that I could see having as a organizer of these events. And like, how hard is it to be an organizer? You got to get the word out and make events and schedule it. And like, I'm doing this for free as a volunteer just because I like this. And now also you want me to pay $20 out of my own pocket to do this thing? Like, oh my gosh, well, I'll just make a Facebook group. Yep. But if you could come to me and say, hey, you're a developer, you want to have a meetup, fantastic, great. I like people like you. Thank you so much for the service you're doing for the world, because it's community and you get to know people and you get much more connections and it's great. Here's my guide for how to start this if you've never done it before, or if you've done this in person, here's my guide for like how to transition to having it virtual. Here's a fun little info product for like how to get speakers at your events for things that people will be interested in. By the way, if you have a collection of talks, here's this separate thing that I made that'll help you have asynchronous talks among your audience while it's going on. And then you trust me and I've helped you and you've been able to run a few successful things. Now I come in and say, you've done all this work. Thank you so much. Would you be interested in a sponsorship? I would love to facilitate a sponsorship for you so that maybe you get paid. Maybe, you become the person who connects the sponsor with the organizer. That like if I'm hosting a React meetup, you help me get there and you help me get my first 10 people in the meetup and have continual recurring things. And then I see a banner on my dashboard and I get an email that says, hey, Facebook would like to sponsor your event. They'd like to send you $100. All you have to do is whatever. Here's the standard agreement. You mention that the event's sponsored by Facebook and say, if any of you React developers are looking for a new job, here's the way to do that through Facebook. That's the most obvious vector of attack that I can see for making money doing it in a non-corporate way. That might get fun too with like, if it's for developers specialized in technology, maybe you make money through like I forgot the correct name for it, but like headhunter fees of if you get someone hired at a job that you get like $1,000 for referring them. I could also see that working out. Does any of that resonate with you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, so that's basically my thought, is that if I offer it for free and do sponsors, it basically turns into a giant job ad thing, right?
Yeah.
It's like, that's basically why, well, there's two reasons why companies sponsor developer meetups. One is for jobs, right? And the other is just if they, like want to provide goodwill, like for the area or whatever. A lot of local meetups are sponsored by local companies who just, and that's ultimately for jobs too, really. It's like, we're positive citizens, come work for us, basically. Yeah. And so the headhunter thing is interesting. So do you know the company TripleByte?
I've heard them advertise on podcasts, I think.
Yeah. So they are basically a recruiting firm too. And companies like them, so they have one, and companies like them, recruiters like them, have really high, like if you place a person through them, then you get like a lot of money, like several $1,000s.
Wow.
And so, And so it could be, basically a funnel for recruiters essentially.
Yeah.
I'd have to think about how you got to do that in a non-spammy way, like I'd have to think about that. But yes, I mean, that's where the money is getting people jobs.
Cool. Okay, well, those are my ideas for pushing that forward. And also, like, do what you want. I think I've become much more comfortable in the space of not having a grand vision of what I want to do and just trusting my intuition more of like the work that's most exciting to me going forward. It's led me to good, exciting places. Like this whole I've invented like a media editing pipeline. Over the last few months that I had no plans to do earlier in 2020, and it just sort of happened. And now I have all these thoughts about like maybe this is a separate product, or maybe this integrates with another product. But it's the work that I'm finding so much more enjoyable. That like I think I feel very fortunate to be in a situation where I have File Inbox, this product that's making enough money for me to live on. That like it's not a lot of money. I'm not becoming like filthy rich based on the proceeds of this, but it's given me enough time and freedom to be able to think about what direction do I want to be going in, and like, oh my gosh, I so much more prefer the reality where I can work on the work that's most exciting to me instead of the work that I need to be doing to be maximizing for money. And like that's what am I trying to say? To prevent finding myself in a situation where I'm doing something that I don't want to be doing to make money, I think it's important for me to be paying attention to the feelings of inspiration of if I'm actually enjoying the work that I'm doing in trying to find the thing that's going to make me money. That's not a fully digested thought. Let me chew on that. I'll have a better.
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, and I'm in a similar but quite different situation where I have some runway because of my consulting. I saved my consulting stuff, and I feel like I could get another consulting gig kind of whenever I want, but I have a finite runway. And so I need to make something happen. That's, part of this thing. Like maybe a meetup replacement is an awesome long-term play, but if I can't get that up and running in a year, then, I'm going to have to abandon it for something else or, keep it running on the side basically. Yeah. So I don't have something. I have some residual money. I do Egghead courses. I do like other things. So I have some money coming in, but it's definitely not enough to pay my bills. So I'm in
that's a higher pressure situation. So I guess I guess thinking about that within that context of what's the way that you could build up passive income the quickest between these two projects or maybe a third project.
Well, that's some. Well, so like I had the idea to do a course about how to get into consulting, right? That was a lot of the idea behind that would be another passive income stream
Yep.
that would let me work on other things.
Yep. Yeah, I like that. That sounds like a good thing to.
But it's also a big distraction
energy.
from everything else I want to do. So
Maybe we had touched on this last episode, but I think all of the things that you're working on, it sounds like are all serving the same audience. I don't know that I would frame it as a distraction. It's all going in the direction of helping the same sort of person.
right.
Cool.
All right. Well, that was a lot about me. How about you? What have you done recently, and what are you looking to do?
The thing that I mentioned in the last episode of the native macOS app to be able to put a camera of myself on the screen, I made it and I love it. Instead of Camboy, which everyone I told, I was on a walk in the morning just like brainstorming name ideas, and they're like, "Oh, Camboy, yeah, that sounds right," and bought the domain name on my phone. I hadn't like consciously thought through it until our episode last week, and I've told that name to a few people since then. They're like, "No, that's a terrible."
Yeah.
So CamHead it's like a head cam,
Yes.
which I guess that could be dirty also, but is less so.
Less so.
Yes. So CamHead.app is where this is going to live, and I love it. I've recorded like 4 or 5 different little talking head style videos since doing this, and the workflow is it's so nice, and I've got keyboard shortcuts for everything. Of like, I have the idea for a video I want to record, and I hit a keyboard shortcut to change my screen resolution. And I also need to pull up my dock because on the new M1 MacBooks, you can't change your screen to 1080p resolution. But that's a problem I figured out. And then I have a command on the terminal that uses the screen record app that I just type SR and hit enter, and it does a little countdown and then starts recording. And then I do the video and I just do it live. And if I made a mistake, I'm recording these short enough that I can just do multiple takes. So I hit stop and then I hit start again. And as soon as I hit stop, it opens up the folder where the video is and then goes through processing it of my audio is slightly off from the M1. I don't know if people watching this on YouTube can tell. This is a thing I haven't figured out yet, but it's a quarter of a second off. The audio is a quarter of a second ahead of my video. So on the talking head videos, that's pretty easy to just shift that over by a quarter of a second. And then I crop it so it's in 16:9 resolution. And then a thing that I'd love is that automatically uploads to YouTube. So like, it's so nice. And the workflow of like that transition between the small, my head in the corner, and the big, it's entirely my face. It's, I had all these ideas about like, am I going to do this based on keyboard and mouse movement? And that was looking to be really complicated in Swift of how to do that system wide. I think I would need to build accessibility features of that I have access to the keyboard and mouse all the time or something. And what I found was it's a really good workflow to just, when I want full screen video, and currently the little head is in the bottom corner, I just mouse over the video and then it expands to full screen with this beautiful animation. Animations in Cocoa are just so easy. It was just a Boolean value of like, go from here to here and animate it too. That'd be great. So much easier than when I was doing it in JavaScript. And then once I'm in full video, I just click and then it shrinks back to the smaller video. So like, man, I love the output of those. It's exactly what I wanted. There's no processing of switching back and forth between the two angles. There's no funny business of figuring out the audio syncing or retiming it. There's no cropping even I have to do with the videos because I know exactly when it stops and I know when it ends, so I can make it nice and tight. I love it, and this is now going to feed into my workflow. I've installed on I started a coding class based on a TEDx talk I gave like 8 years ago of teaching people how to learn to code, just like basic HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And I was stalled on that because the workflow that I used to make the original videos depended on this extra computer. I built like this video editing Linux machine that was using OBS, and I was using a camera plugged into that and also the output from my computer. And it was just a lot. It's a lot of moving pieces. It's a lot of wires I have to think about moving it back and forth. And now I've brought that entire workflow into my computer, and the output is better than it was with that huge, outrageous OBS setup. So, ooh, now that I've made this machine that can just, I can spit out these videos, the friction is removed, and now there's all this built-up pressure of the videos that I wanted to make for this course. They're just going to start flowing out. And now anytime I have the impetus of like, oh, this is a fun thing that would make a good tutorial, it's half an hour is where the process is right now for me to go from I have an idea for something to there's a polished video. That's only going to get shorter. I'm really, really happy with where this tool is. And side note, Cocoa development, although strange, I like it. It's weird compared to like where I'm coming from web development, but there's a lot of very nice things about it. Of like Swift is a typed language, so I have to be putting thought into like the what type each variable is, which is sort of annoying. They have this nice system of if an object can't be null, you can like wrap and unwrap it. But the benefit of that is now you can have this inline documentation of if I'm using a method I've never used before, it tells me what all the arguments are and what the type of each one of them is. And there's a little bar on the right side of Xcode that shows me the documentation for the method that I'm currently hovering over. I wouldn't say that I like it more than web development, but I see there are benefits of that system, and it's nice.
It's the same reason people like TypeScript, which I kind of like not types. For the same reason, but yeah, I understand, why TypeScript is awesome, especially on Teams. So
I see it. I actually had that same thought of I'm more curious to try TypeScript now that I've been immersed in this environment where like, oh, okay, I get it. I see why you would want to have typing in your language. It's weird though. Distributing it is going to be a pain of like, there's this gatekeeper now. I can't just push to any web server. I have to get permission from Apple and have it signed and go through the App Store, and I'm not excited about that. I tried to do that this morning, and there's a part of their workflow, their website that I think is currently broken that like won't let me type in this input box that I need to be able to register an app. So that's I don't like that part, but it's
stuff like
cool.
that happens sort of all the time. You just deal with it on
Gross.
site. Yeah.
I don't like it. I like the distributed system of the web. I appreciate much more now. Like there's this beautiful open platform to be able to make apps, to be able to make useful things that no single person or company is in charge of. There are no gatekeepers. It's beautiful. You can just make whatever you want. You can put it out there and everyone in the world can use it. At every stage of the platform, from hosting to domain names to what language you're, I guess not what language, because that's only JavaScript, to what framework you're using to host stuff. There's choices, and it's very open. I like that. And I see the advantages of having a more closed system.
What you will like, though, is that if you put it on there and put a price on it, people will just buy it, and you will just get money. Yeah.
So this is a question I'd like to ask you. I don't know what to do with this now. This is a thing that I built for myself because this is the perfect solution for me of what I wanted to make these sort of Loom-style videos. You've expressed interest in like this is a thing that you would like now that it's built. Do I sell it on the App Store? Do I make it freemium and maybe the free version just has like a link to it has like an overlay on the video that says that this is CamHead.app and if you want to use it, I kind of like that model from Sublime of like it just says unregistered in the upper right hand corner. And when I was a student, I loved that because I just used it unregistered for like 4 years. And then finally, when I had money, I paid whatever it was, like $89 to get it registered. What are your thoughts on that? What should I do with this next?
Yeah, so I have several thoughts. Yeah, I said as soon as you did it, I was like, I want that because I want to do talking head videos and I don't want to have to sync up my, I don't want to have to put that in post, right?
Yep.
So I thought about that. You should definitely put a price on it and put it in the App Store. Freemium is an interesting model. You could do freemium with a watermark. So that's interesting. And then have like an in-app purchase to upgrade.
Yeah.
I would put it in there. So I thought about prices too, and I'm just one data point, but here's my data point. At $9, I would buy it immediately. At $19, I'd probably try to look to see if there was a free version of something that would work first, but then may end up ultimately buying yours anyway. And at $29, I would probably say, I'll just use something free, even though it'd probably take way more of my time and be, like that's an irrational decision. But
yeah, I feel that.
Yeah. So, but if you put it today on the App Store for $9, I'd buy it and leave you a good review. So there you go.
Cool. Okay. I would appreciate the good review for $9. And I think I want to try something weird of doing it freemium with a watermark.
Yeah.
And if you want to get rid of the watermark, I think I'm going to charge like $100.
All right, do it.
And then if it's a thing that people are using, and so like the benefit of that is I would like for this to exist and be accessible to more people because I would like for there to be more video content in the world. That's my favorite type of content. I think you mentioned on one of the podcasts when you're learning a thing, like when you're learning how to sheet drywall, the best form of information to learn that is through video from YouTube videos. So like I would just like more videos to be created, and this is a thing that would make that better. And then seeing that as like a lead magnet that now more people are going to see that things are being made with this CamHead thing, and because it's going to be in the corner, and I'm sure people will ask like, oh, how was that made? Oh, there's a watermark here. And then for the people who care that there's a watermark, those are people using it professionally that like are making content for their egghead videos or whatever. And I've demonstrated value. You know exactly what you're going to get if you pay me $99. You're going to get the exact same thing, but without a watermark. And then it feels much more like Sublime of like, you could be using this for years without paying for it, and that's fine. You're effectively doing free advertising for me. And if you care about the professionalness of it, then it's offset that cost by paying me a lot of money.
Yeah. No, I love it. I would definitely do that. The other thing I just thought of is one way. So you're going to run into how do you get this in front of people who actually want to buy it. I think you should really look at influencer marketing, which sounds kind of funny, but basically give it away for free to a whole bunch of YouTubers who do this kind of stuff. And then if they use it and like it, then they might talk about it. You could also pay people to talk about it, which is a little more like ads, like influencer ads, right? But yeah, that's how I would do it, because especially like if there's YouTube videos, for example, that teach people how to do YouTube videos, like target those people, like 100%. Yeah. Just find 100 of them and give it to them.
I like YouTubers teaching other YouTubers how to YouTube. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if they're using it. Okay, so what would that look like logistically? I think I reach out to someone on YouTube, and I'm connected with a lot of these people through the Ali Abdal's YouTuber course.
Sure.
I think I would want them to have the watermark. So I think I'm just going to make a video that's like, hey, here's this thing I made. You can use it for free. If you have a Mac, it's Mac only, and it's free. And so if you want to use it, you can use it. And by default, they'll be doing influencer advertising for me because it'll have my watermark in the corner.
Yeah, you could totally do that. If they're serious, though, they'd probably want it without the watermark. You could say something like, here's a thing I made. If you like it and want to mention it on your YouTube channel, I'll give you a code to get rid of the watermark as long as you mention it or something, So.
Okay, maybe if you have a link to my app in your description, I'll give you a code so that you can have the watermark off for free.
Or something like that.
That deal would make sense for me.
You could also just cold email 1,000 YouTubers that do this kind of content and say, hey, I made a thing to make it easier, right? Yeah. And you might get sales. So,
yeah, there's more than 1,000 people in this YouTuber course. I feel like I would have that reach just by like pinging this group. Isn't it nuts? And he charged like $800 to $3,000 per head for people in this course. Like he made so much money from this course.
Yeah,
I'm so inspired. I used to not respect info products as real products. I used to think, oh, if it's a SaaS or nothing, you didn't build a real company because it's not scalable. Marie Poulin has a funny story about that. But like hearing more stories about people in info products, it's fantastic. And then you don't have to like maintain it. You don't have to manage any servers. You just record some videos and throw it up there, and you're helping people just as much, if not more, as a SaaS product. I'm warming up to the idea that like helping people with a business does not need to look like a software as a service business to be most effective. My human-centered design professor that I had in undergrad would be very proud of me right now, because in my assignments there, I was notorious for just like every problem that we had. It was like, how do we better manage nursing home care or like nursing home communities?
Software.
Yeah, that was my go-to. Just like every problem, I was like, well, here's an app you could build to solve that. And like, no, there's so many other ways to help people that don't involve making software. One more. Go ahead.
I was going to say, if anyone listening wants more info about how to do info products, watch Adam Wathan's MicroConf talk. it talks about how he made 600K on infoproducts.
Yes.
And I remember being in the audience there, and everyone was basically like, "Oh, infoproducts are a thing." Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, one of my favorite Microcraft docs. I'll have that linked in the description also. My recap of at a month in stock. Yeah, it's nuts. The info products are a very real business. You can make a book that will make you $1 million. That's a thing that people do. It's if you're focused on like the thing that you're building as opposed to the audience and the problem they have and how to help them. That's how you get sucked into this trap of let me start by building software. That if you're focused on like how do I help people the most effectively, that will lead you to a lot of interesting places. It might look like software, it might look like a book, it might look like a video course, it might look like a series of tweets. But as long as you're focused on the end goal of like helping people, that's the North Star of how you be most effective. That's the idea that I keep pulling back to.
Yep. All right. I love how I thought we would do like half an hour podcasts, and we're now over an hour.
Yeah, well, it's the benefit of this medium. We can talk as long as we're being interesting. I have other stuff, but we'll save it for another time.
Sure.
So that's all I got for now. Do you have anything else you'd like to say?
No, I think
for
that's it.
our 10th episode.
Yeah. Exciting. Let's go to
It is
100.
very exciting. All right, well, goodbye, and I'll see you next time.
All right.